Following the shooting that happened last night involving an ICE agent, the Hawthorne neighborhood.
El Paso port of entry, 4:17 a.m. darkness. A refrigerated semi-idles in lane 6, engine ticking, vapor rolling off the trailer. A K9 handler tightens his grip. The dog freezes. Sits. Silent alert. The driver's hands stay at 10 and 2, but his eyes keep flicking to the floor. Because the drugs aren't in the boxes. They're under the truck. By 4:19 a.m., the manifest is already cleared on paper. Clean carrier. Active insurance. Dot numbers matching. The kind of trucking company you trust to haul food. The kind of trucking company that passes inspections for years. But the dog doesn't care about paperwork. At 4:21 a.m., the K9 alerts again at the rear axle line. Exact same seam where the refrigeration unit meets the trailer frame. Passive sit. No bark. No drama. Just certainty. A CBP officer signals. Secondary. The semi rolls into the inspection bay. Darkness under sodium floodlights. Steel walls. Cameras. Every movement recorded. At 4:24 a.m., a handheld density scanner sweeps the trailer floor. The readout spikes. Not insulation. Not wood. Too dense. Too consistent. Metal reinforcement where no reinforcement should exist. The driver tries to keep his voice level. It's produce. Tomatoes. That's what dispatch gave me. He doesn't know the name dispatch is already compromised. Because 2,000 miles away, FBI analysts have been watching the money. Deposits moving like a corporation. Profits moving like a small carrier. A gap that makes no sense unless the business is subsidized by something else. Something illegal. And the DEA has been watching the packaging. Tape colors, seal patterns, stamped bricks, showing up in seizures in different jurisdictions like a fingerprint that keeps reappearing. At 4:28 a.m., a CBP supervisor keys his radio. Bring the tools. This isn't a traffic stop anymore. This is an interdiction. At 4:31 a.m., a saw bites into the trailer floor. Metal screams. Sparks jump. The bay fills with the smell of hot steel and burned sealant. A pry bar lifts the last panel. Vacuum-sealed bricks appear, stacked like munitions, uniform in size, numbered, color-coded, heat-sealed. Not hidden behind cargo. Not tucked in sidewalls. Engineered into the structure. Boom. 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 Evidence cases slam shut as the count climbs. A DEA liaison on scene steps forward and looks at the cavity like he's staring into a weapons bay. That's not smuggling, he says. That's logistics. At 4:35 a.m., the call goes out to the Joint Task Force Command Post. Compartment confirmed. Priority build. Repeat, priority build. And with that phrase, the operation shifts. Because this truck isn't the target. It's the proof. At 4:41 a.m., GPS trackers already planted on the company's fleet light up across the command screens. Multiple produce loads moving simultaneously, staggered by minutes, running parallel routes like a convoy that refuses to call itself a convoy. The cartel's plan is simple. Hide poison in America's food supply chain and let routine protect it. Let traffic protect it. Let legitimate contracts protect it. They think nobody will shut down a system that feeds the country. They think wrong. But the cartel made 5 catastrophic mistakes. First, they trusted paperwork more than surveillance, so their trucks followed patterns that analysts could map. Second, they used innocent drivers as camouflage, then terrified, confused drivers became tells. Third, they built hydraulic traps so complex they required specialized maintenance, creating a single point of failure, the shop. Fourth, they laundered money through business accounts so aggressively that the math screamed fraud. Fifth, they reused packaging and procedures across routes, turning separate seizures into a single fingerprint. What happened in the next 17 hours became the most devastating multi-state takedown of a cartel logistics network in a decade. This is that story. The cartel didn't need more gunmen. They needed infrastructure. They built it the American way: corporate filings, dispatch software, fuel cards, compliance binders, warehouse leases. A legitimate shell that could move across state lines without panic. A system that looked like commerce and functioned like a supply line. Federal cases have described how cartel-linked networks move narcotics through the United States using semi-truck transport and coordinated handlers and dispatchers, treating drugs like scheduled freight instead of street product FBI. And prosecutors have detailed real investigations where large loads were moved via truck driver co-conspirators, supported by undercover operations and major seizures across 2023 and 2024 US DOJ. Operation Iron Carrier was built to do one thing: don't catch a load, collapse the machine. At 5:02 a.m., Phase 1 begins. On Interstate 10, a state highway interdiction unit positions a cruiser ahead of a target tractor-trailer. Unmarked SUVs sit offset in the dark, maintaining distance. No sirens yet. No rush. They are not hunting a driver. They are hunting a network. At 5:07 a.m., the cruiser lights him up. The truck signals right. Pulls over. The driver steps down, trembling. He keeps repeating one line: "I'm just a driver." Sometimes, that is true. At 5:11 a.m., the K9 walks the perimeter, sits at the exact same seam. Rear axle line, floor junction, same tell, same engineering, same hidden bay. At 5:14 a.m., a borescope is inserted through an undercarriage scene. The camera snakes inside a void that shouldn't exist. Steel rails, actuator mounts, sealed compartment edges, industrial-grade fabrication, hydraulic trap confirmed. At 5:18 a.m., the interdiction team does not celebrate. They do not high-five. They go quiet, because every minute they wait is a minute the other trucks keep moving. At 5:22 a.m., Command approves Phase 2. Across multiple jurisdictions, sealed warrants are ready. Names, addresses, warehouses, dispatch offices, maintenance yards, bank accounts, phones. This isn't a raid. This is synchronized warfare. At 5:40 a.m., the trucking company's maintenance depot is already under covert observation. Cameras show a night shift. Welders. Sparks. A trailer backed into Bay 3. The cartel thought the shop was invisible. It isn't. At 6 a.m., broad daylight. The order hits, execute. A ram breaches the yard gate. Vehicles flood in. Agents dismount in stacks. Long guns low ready. Ballistic vests marked with DEA and FBI. Forklifts freeze mid-lift. Workers turn. Faces go white. A team leader shouts, "Federal agents. Hands. Hands." At 6:02 a.m., the first layer hits, perimeter lockdown. Agents establish a hard cordon at every exit. No vehicles leave. No phones out. No movement without control. At 6:05 a.m., second layer, breach and clear. Teams flow into the maintenance building. One bay at a time. One office at a time. They move like a SWAT element, because a cartel logistics hub is still a cartel hub. At 6:07 a.m., third layer, evidence domination. Digital forensics secures servers. Dispatch computers. GPS logs. Fuel card records. Maintenance work orders. Payroll spreadsheets. At 6:09 a.m., fourth layer, asset freeze. Financial agents begin immediate seizure protocols on accounts and cash holdings tied to the warrants. 4 layers. Perimeter. Assault. Evidence. Money. Overwhelming. At 6:12 a.m., inside Bay 3, agents catch the mechanics mid-build. A trailer frame sits on jacks. The floor assembly is open. A hydraulic lift system is being installed into a concealed cavity. Precision-cut steel, welded seams, pump mounts, wiring harnesses. Not repairs. Engineering. A mechanic reaches toward a toolbox like he's going for something. An agent snaps his rifle up. "Don't move." The mechanic freezes. Catastrophic mistake. They centralized fabrication. One shop. One roster. One set of blueprints. At 6:18 a.m., evidence techs photograph everything. Blueprints. Cut templates. Serial numbers of pumps. Invoices for hydraulic components. Drill jigs. Welding masks. Brand new steel plates pre-cut to fit hidden bays. There's a wall board with trailer IDs and nicknames. Priority units. And next to that, route printouts. Hidden routes that don't match invoices. The trucks were running legitimate freight lanes and shadow lanes. At 6:22 a.m., a DEA supervisor radios command. Command, we have the route board. Multiple corridors. Multiple hubs. This is the network. At 6:29 a.m., another team hits the corporate office. Glass building. Clean lobby. Motivational posters. Compliance certificates framed like trophies. Agents move past reception. Past conference rooms. Straight to executive offices and the server closet. At 6:32 a.m., an FBI cyber agent pulls a laptop before the cursor can hit delete. The executive stammers. We're a legitimate carrier. We have contracts. An agent answers flat. You're a laundering front with rolling compartments. At 6:36 a.m., payroll records confirm the two-tier system. Tier 1, normal wages. Direct deposit. Standard per mile rates. These are the drivers who may not know. Tier 2, cash bonuses. Performance pay. Off-book disbursements. These are the drivers who do know. At 6:41 a.m., highway teams stop a second priority unit. Broad daylight. Traffic building. The cartel expected the road to be protection. Instead, the road becomes a trap. At 6:43 a.m., the driver is calm, too calm. No shaking hands. No confusion. He refuses consent. Demands a lawyer instantly. AK-9 circles. Sits. At 6:47 a.m., portable scanning confirms the same rectangular density anomaly under the cargo. At 6:50 a.m., agents connect an external power unit to the hydraulic assembly. The compartment opens with a controlled whine. The floor lifts cleanly like a factory hatch. Inside, bundles stacked in layers, vacuum sealed, uniform, labeled. Boom, boom, boom. Overwhelming evidence. At 7:02 a.m., command receives confirmation from a third stop. Then a fourth. This is not one modified trailer. This is a fleet doctrine. At 7:11 a.m., a radio call cuts through the command post. Command, this is Delta 2. We have a courier vehicle on the route board location. 2 occupants. Possible cash movement. Command answers, hold surveillance. Do not burn. Track to destination. They aren't just taking trucks. They're taking the money. At 7:24 a.m., surveillance follows the courier to a stash location. An unmarked warehouse with no signage, no public business, and a loading dock that never shows up on the company's official paperwork. At 7:31 a.m., the warrant team stacks at the dock door. Breach. The door comes off hinges. Inside, pallets wrapped in black plastic. A counting table. Bundles of currency in heat-sealed bricks. Packaging supplies. Ledger notebooks. A wall calendar with route dates circled in red. Not chaos. Scheduling. At 7:39 a.m., an agent calls it in, millions in cash on scene. Repeat, millions. At 7:55 a.m., the task force now has enough to do what the cartel never believed would happen. They start snapping the network shut in real time. At 8:10 a.m., dispatchers are detained. Phones seized. Encrypted apps open on screens. An FBI agent reads a message thread aloud, route numbers, stop points, coded terms for compartments. This is military-grade operational discipline applied to crime. At 8:27 a.m., a final wave of interdictions hits. Highway patrol units stop targeted semis based on the route board and live dispatch messages now in federal custody. Every stop looks the same. Broad daylight. Calm truck. Clean manifest. K9 alert. Density spike. Hidden cavity. Every time, the trap opens. Every time, the same silence as agents look into the engineered void. At 8:44 a.m., one driver collapses on the shoulder, sobbing. "I didn't know," he keeps saying. "I didn't know." And the task force believes him, because terrified innocence doesn't look like trained composure. At 9:03 a.m., command authorizes separation protocol. All drivers are detained for identification and interview. Tier 1 drivers are processed and cleared as evidence supports it. Tier 2 drivers are cuffed and isolated. Because the cartel counted on one thing, confusion. Operation Iron Carrier replaces confusion with structure. At 9:26 a.m., Forensic accountants begin tracing the money chain from company accounts to shell entities. Transfers timed to routes. Payments synchronized with deliveries. At 9:58 a.m., agents execute a seizure order on business accounts and physical assets connected to the warrants. They don't just arrest people, they bankrupt the engine. At 10:31 a.m., a final search of the maintenance depot yields the most catastrophic proof yet: a list of completed builds with trailer IDs matched to dates. A production schedule. This wasn't concealment. This was manufacturing. At 11:12 a.m., command calls for a full operational count. Total trucks identified as priority units, 48. Total compartments confirmed and opened, 28. Total cash seized at physical sites, $3 for 20,000. Total firearms recovered at connected locations, 11. And the day isn't over. At 12:06 p.m., another warehouse warrant is executed. Inside, packaging supplies, scales, pill presses, cutting agents. At 12:42 p.m., a final corridor stop results in another trap opening, another load removed from circulation. Boom, boom, boom. Overwhelming. At 1:19 p.m., command receives confirmation: the trucking company's operational hub is neutralized. Dispatch system seized. Maintenance bay shut down. Priority fleet pinned and captured. At 2:04 p.m., the last targeted truck is taken off the road. And with that, the cartel's rolling empire stops moving. Resolution begins at 2:17 p.m. The arrests aren't cinematic. They're methodical. Names read. Charges stated. Phones bagged. Hands cuffed. The drivers are the human cost. Tier 1 drivers, legitimate workers, are interviewed, verified, and cleared where evidence supports it. Tier 2 drivers, paid to know, are processed as trafficking conspirators. The cartel thought innocent drivers were perfect camouflage. Catastrophic mistake. Innocence still reacts to fear differently than guilt. Final enforcement outcome for Operation Iron Carrier. Enemy, Cartel Networker 63 arrested a 48 priority trailer, seized a 28 hydraulic trap compartments, confirmed opened a 11 firearms, seized a $3,420,000 cash, seized a 19 bank accounts frozen. U.S. forces, a 0 killed, a 0 missing, a 2 minor injuries, 1 sprained wrist during breach, 1 heat exhaustion treated on scene. Then the cartel tried to rewrite the story. Enemy propaganda versus reality. The cartel claimed, "We lost nothing. The loads were decoys. The Americans arrested drivers to make headlines." Complete fabrication. Satellite imagery and warrant inventories revealed. Seized trailers lined in federal impound, maintenance bays sealed under court order, and financial accounts frozen with documented transaction chains tied to route schedules. The logistics hub was dismantled, not disrupted. And the public record shows why these operations matter. Real investigations have documented massive narcotics movement coordinated through handlers and dispatchers using semi-trucks as strategic transport, with large drug weights seized and international partners involved in takedowns. FBI prosecutors have detailed cartel-linked distribution rings moving meth and fentanyl through the United States with significant seizures and arrests in coordinated enforcement actions. US DOJ. Global reaction came fast. A U.S. attorney called these networks sophisticated, organized crime groups who put profits over people's lives, emphasizing coordinated enforcement to dismantle leadership, not just street-level nodes. FBI.DEA leadership in an unrelated cartel-linked case described narcotic seizures in terms of millions of lethal doses, underscoring the scale and public danger of high-volume fentanyl movement. US DOJ. And the operational model, target the network, seize the infrastructure, freeze the money, was presented as the only way to stop industrial trafficking from regenerating. Strategic implications are brutal and simple. This wasn't a raid on criminals. This was a strike on logistics. Cartels adapt. When borders harden, they tunnel. When couriers get caught, they recruit accountants. When stash houses get raided, they build companies. Operation Iron Carrier showed the counter-adaptation, dismantle the architecture. Because the real battlefield is now supply chain trust. Broad daylight becomes camouflage for crime, until enforcement turns broad daylight into exposure. Broad daylight becomes their shield, until broad daylight becomes their spotlight. Broad daylight becomes routine, until routine becomes a trap. But other adversaries watched carefully, not because they care about narcotics, because the methodology, interagency fusion, financial warfare, synchronized warrants, rapid exploitation of seized communications, applies to any network threat. China watched what happens when money trails get pulled tight. Russia watched what happens when logistics nodes become targets. Iran watched what happens when encrypted coordination collapses under lawful seizure. North Korea watched what happens when a revenue machine gets cut at the infrastructure level. Deterrence isn't a speech. Deterrence is a seized fleet. And the lesson is clear: if you weaponize commerce, the response will be overwhelming, legal, financial, and operational.